Hey everyone, Chris here with another filler video. Now today I decided that it might be an interesting idea to do a little behind the scenes stuff. So I'm going to show you guys how I actually go about figuring out who shows up on the Patreon screens at the end of the episodes now. So as you guys have probably seen, since about, I think I started this in July, was it? I forget when, but not too many months ago, I started showing Patreon screens at the end of every episode, and it actually features random selections of different Patreon supporters. But it's not just completely random, because depending on the reward tier that a patron is supporting the show at, depends on how likely they'll show up. So it's actually at the $1 tier and higher, their name shows up in white and they have the normal chance. At the $2 reward tier and higher, their name shows up in blue and it's double the chance, basically. At the $4 tier and higher, their name shows up in green and it's a triple the chance. And at the $8 tier and higher than that is quadruple chance and their name shows up in gold. Now, that's kind of not a very straightforward thing to do, so what I did was, as I've got on screen right here, is I wrote a little program to do this for me. And yeah, we're in QBasic right now because this thing is still so useful for doing simple things like this. So let me step you through exactly what's going on here. This stuff at the start here, that's just initialization stuff. I could tell you exactly what it does. Like, this is telling the program to use long integers by default. This is just setting the screen properties, and this is randomizing or setting up a seed on the randomizer to the timer value so that it's as random as I can get it. The next thing I do here is these are the different reward tiers I have, and I actually have to tell this program how many people are in each one of these tiers. So that way it knows how many tickets to generate for each person. The program doesn't actually do any of the names, it only does numbers. And then I can assign those numbers to people in the list, because I can actually pull up a list of all the patrons who've supported the show for a particular month, and I could just compare these numbers to how many entries down the list. So you can actually see right here, this is what the numbers are going to look like when they show up on screen. It's going to start with the tier number, followed by the person who supported the show. So if it showed up as 8 here and 10 here, that would be the 10th person who's supporting the show in the $8 tier bracket, because there's 11 here. So I just count down the list to 10 and there I go. So as for the rest of the program, what it's basically doing is it's setting up all the different tickets for everyone, because again, it's more tickets at the higher reward tiers, up to the $8 one, at which point you can see it's generating 4 tickets for all of the tiers above 8, but only 3 tickets for the 4 tier, 2 tickets for the 2 tier, and the 1 tier doesn't even need to have a for loop in there. So it sets up all the tickets, and then we begin the actual randomization cycle. So it's going to print the cycles on the screen. Now each cycle, you're going to see them go by really freaking quickly, and each cycle is actually 100 shuffles of this array that I've created with all of these tickets in it. So once the cycles get up to like 1,000, that's 100,000 shuffles. So there's no way in hell I can like predict what this is going to turn out to be. And yeah, this is something I wish C and C++ did, and other programming languages, is QBasic actually has a swap command, so you can swap the values between 2 different variables. I really wish there was an easy way to do that in other programming languages. But in any case, so it keeps doing the cycles, and waits for me to press a key. And if I press the key, it breaks the cycles. And when I do break the cycles, it now just takes a random number between 8 and 12 to indicate how many people I should be showing in on the screen itself, because it's actually a random number between 8 and 12, if anyone's noticed that. And then it shows 16 results, regardless of anything, for a couple of reasons. The big reason being that there occasionally some of these entries in here will be declined unfortunately. It's not it's not a perfect system. Like, I mean, sometimes there could be a decline because somebody didn't keep their account status up to date, didn't have any money in their thing or anything, or sometimes it can be declined for stupid reasons, like the system failed or something. But when that happens, there's not much I can do about it except hope that it fixes itself, because I'm not in control of Patreon. But in any case, so that's why I have it pulling 16 results. The other reason why I'm having it pull 16 results is just in case I need more than I think I do. For example, some of the entries in here are going to be new entries. In fact, I've got 5 new entries to show for this time around. And in fact, we're going to see the Patreon screen I'm creating today at the end of this video. But if there's new entries in here that are drawn, then the new entries are going to appear anyways, so it kind of doesn't really count, even though it kind of does. I don't know, basically the new entries are going to show up anyways, so it's just one to ignore and then continue moving on down the list. Now, because there's going to be 5 new entries and it is capped at 12, and because I add the new entries to whatever the quantity selection is, there's going to be 12 this time no matter what. And in fact, because 5 of them are new entries, it means I'm only going to be showing 7 random entries this time around. So I'm only going to need the first 7 minimum. So let's actually run this thing. And I have actually counted all these out. I have to count those out manually every month, but I have them counted out already. So let's actually run the program. So yeah, as you can see, it's generating cycles really quickly, and each one of those is 100 shuffles of the results. So I'm going to give it a little, just so that we get a nice good shuffling of everything. Yeah, I usually like to wait till it's past 2,000 or so. That way it gets nice and really shuffled and everything. And I forget if I showed this or not, but it actually does, if you... Actually, let me control break it. Or no, if I push a key, it's going to stop it. I'll show you this after I generate the results. So let's push a key. So those are the results right there. I'm going to write these down quickly. Or... Actually, I don't have to, because QBasic has this nice little thing where if you clear that away, but you need to go see the output again, you just go to output screen. So I can pull that back up easy. So let me show you guys what's actually happening here in terms of actually selecting the results. See, it's basically just a for loop right here, 1 to 16, for picking 16 results out. The first thing it does is it actually picks a random number between 0 and the total number of tickets, which in this case will be quite a lot. And that's what actually TT stands for, is total tickets. And it will continue looping as long as that ticket value is 0. Now, none of the ticket values are 0 by default. They've all been set to those special numbers, as you can see right there. So what ends up happening is when a ticket's selected, it sets the variable entry to that ticket, prints it on the screen, and then it goes through the entire list of tickets, and if it finds that entry on any of the tickets, it nullifies it to 0. That way it can't be picked again, and that way somebody who has multiple chances for being picked isn't going to show up twice. Or more times, potentially. So that way I get a nice selection of people who are all going to be unique, and then I just go through and pick out, well, I actually go in order. So in this case, I'll be picking out the 17th person at the $4 tier, the 8th person at the $4 tier, the 10th person at the $8 tier, the 2nd person in the $32 tier, the 34th person in the $1 tier, the 24th person in the $1 tier, and the 3rd person in the $8 tier. And if any of those happen to be declined, or one of the new people or something, then it would move on to the next one, which would be the 10th person in the $4 tier, and then potentially the first person in the $12 tier. So yeah, now let's move on from the actual program here to how I actually do the graphics for this. So here's all the patrons that managed to get selected this time around, both the new ones and the random ones, and I put them in alphabetical order, and I've also split them up into the 3 columns that we're going to see. Interestingly enough, we don't have any $2 supporters this time around. It's all $1, $4, or $8 plus. So Well, it happens. Random chance. Get you every time. Actually, there's not a lot of $2 supporters. There's either a whole lot of $1 or a whole lot of $4. So, in any case, let me actually show you guys my template here. And this is the template I made for doing the entire process of making these things. It's basically composed of a whole bunch of layers. I'm going to turn them all off. We have the background to start with, and I'm in a really ancient copy of PaintShop Pro, but like, I mean, this thing works so well, it's no reason to upgrade. In any case, we got our text layer here, which has all the different text pieces on it, and it's a vector layer, so these are actually all individual pieces themselves. We've got the color that goes behind it. We've got highlights for when there's particular new people in the list. We've got the actual new words, which again are vectors. And then we've also got this white piece that goes over top of everything, and a glow to accompany it. So let's actually put the correct names into this list to start with. And it's going to be 12 supporters, so I don't have to mess with that. So let me actually get the vector tool going here. So the first selection here, we're going to go over to our list over here. We're just going to copy paste. And then simply remove all the extra bits. Whoops. Simple enough. And then we just do that to the other two. Okay. So we've got our names there. They're not going to be centered properly after doing that, so what I tend to do after that is select them all. And then we're going to center them horizontally. And then I actually have a sort of number of spaces that I do this by. I can actually use the keyboard to move these fixed pixels spaces. I can move them 10 at a time by holding Control and Shift and using the arrow keys. So I just sort of have a sort of pattern that I do to it, if I actually have it selected properly. And then we do that to the far right one. Now, if you're wondering, it's 360 pixels that it's moving each way. So that's what gets it centered. So we've got the names. The next thing to do is to color them. Now the coloring layer, as you can see, it's actually a multiplying layer. So if we actually looked at this without the multiply, it's just going to look like a whole bunch of color swabs. Or swabs, or whatever you say. But in any case, so we get ourselves a little brush going here. Make it big enough to get everything. Now, there's no blue ones this time around. So let's choose the gray one. These are actually the colors that I use right here. So we just have to pick those ones. And we just refer to the list, figure out who should be colored the gray color. So it's the first two in that column, the first and last in that column, and first and last, or no, not the last one in that column. So first two, first, and first and last. So first two, first and last. Okay. Then next we got to do the green ones, which will be third, second, fourth, and not. So third and second, fourth. So pick our green, third, and second, fourth. And you may have seen it change a little color there. I actually didn't have the colors finalized the very first time I did that, so this template has some older color selections on it. So the green that I use now is actually slightly lighter than the green I originally used. Now the gold is a little trickier, because the gold is actually a gradient. In fact, I can pull it up right here. Turn off my repeats there, and ADG gold. The problem is that if I just paint something gold like right now, it doesn't really look gold. It looks like a static color. So the gradient doesn't show up because it's applying the gradient to the entire vertical stretch here. So what I have to do for each gold name, which I can't go by memory, I'm terrible at that. The last, the third, and the middle two. So for the gold names, what I have to do is I have to first create a selection rectangle here. have to go to my magic wand. I have to turn it to sample merged mode so that it's checking all layers. And then I hold Control and deselect the area around it so that it's just selecting the letters in the middle here. Now, when I paint it with the gradient, it actually has the sort of gradient effect to it, because it's only using that vertical space instead of the entire vertical space of the image. So, now I just have to do that to, which ones again? Last, third, and middle two, right. So, do the same thing there, and whip out the paintbrush. And got this one right here. And finally, this one right here. Beautiful. Okay, so we've got the names, we've got them colored. So the next thing to do is, because this has new people in it, we've got to get some new highlights going. This is kind of a tricky one that I don't have perfected yet, but I'm going to try to do it right this time. So the new people are the first two, first and last, and third. So first two, first and last. Oh, what? So I have to hold Shift, not Control. And third? Yeah. So we do the sample merged, removing again. So we've got only those ones selected. Actually, no, I probably shouldn't have done that. Just because of the fact that I need to remove the existing highlights. So deselect. We'll just get rid of those highlights. Okay, try this again. First and last and third. Okay, so get it downscaled there, and now the next thing I have to do is make the selection bigger. 4 pixels, it's about right. So that sort of puts a little border around there. Then I do a drop shadow effect, but I don't do it with typical parameters. The way I need to do it is, first of all, I don't want the blur that big. I think a blur of 4 is what I use. And then I make it the ADG gold color. Now that only makes, as you can see, a very light glow. Like very, well, you can barely see it. So, whoops. Okay, so what I actually want to do is I have a nice little function in here. I don't know if I can bring it up easily here. Oh, I screwed it up because I did the, hang on. But whenever I do an effect in PaintShop Pro, I have the ability to repeat using Control Y. And I want to repeat this 3 times. So that makes it a very sort of, it's a very thin glow, but it's also very, you know, it kind of does, it's like a little border sort of neon effect, sort of. And that's about what I'm aiming for. Like, it's tough to get it to get a thin glow like that to really look good, so I don't try to do it too spectacularly or anything. And then we just got to move around some of these new names here. So just click and drag, because they're vector objects. I like to put them on the edges of wherever someone's new, or in the top corners. And one more. And then for the ones I'm not using, I can just delete them. So we're almost done here. So actually, that's pretty much all there is to making the final screen. So the first thing to do when doing this is I actually go backwards in the image creation sequence. So the first one I'm actually saving is Filler 57, Patreon screen number 5, because there's actually 5 pieces to this puzzle. And yes, save it as a flattened image. So that's the last piece of the puzzle, is the finished product. Next we got to do it with the glow in place. And that is our fourth piece. Next, we have to do it with the glow out of place, but we also have to turn the names off. So if I go into this particular vector layer here, I can actually turn off the individual names. And I'm also going to have to turn off the text highlights. In fact, just turn off all of that. And so that just gives us a screen with none of the names on it and just blackness. And that we save as the third piece. Next, we have to turn off this text at the bottom. And that gives us the second piece. And finally, we just turn off the 12. And that gives us the very first piece of the puzzle. And all of these culminate together in the video editing software to make one simple effect for displaying all the names, which you guys are going to see in a second. So I hope you enjoyed this little behind the scenes sort of thing on how I do this. I could go into a whole episode and show some video editing and stuff, but I'm not quite prepared to talk about that because there's a lot that goes into that kind of stuff, but maybe someday. In any case, hope you guys enjoyed it. I think I already said that. Stay tuned for the next filler, which will be in a couple Saturdays. Got something interesting planned. Don't know if I'll be able to get it ready in time, but we'll see. And if I don't, then we'll do it next month. So, take care, everyone. Thanks for watching, everyone, and special thanks to those of you supporting me on Patreon. Here's just a small sample of you guys.